Paltrocast.
You're an author. I mean, everyone knows you from CNN, but you're an author. You got a new book, and the book's a lot about shrapnel in there. And before we get there, what was your first concert in general?
Okay, my first concert was a good one. It was Aerosmith. And Darren, there's a story. It wasn't just Aerosmith. It was Aerosmith at the Spectrum in Philly, okay? And I was 12. And my best friend was 15. And we went, it was what used to be called festival seating, which is now illegal because of the Who concert, okay, where kids were killed. But before it was illegal, and I'm not exaggerating, we're almost killed that night because we decided that to get good seats, we'd get there like 10 hours early. And so we were literally the second people in line outside at a gate at the Spectrum. And then like 19,000 people lined up behind us and impatient people. And when they got rowdy, they started like rattling the like fences and pushing, and we got pushed up to the front of the Spectrum. And in my memory, I think somebody got pushed through the glass doors. The glass shattered of the doors of the Spectrum, and then the doors opened, and there was a stampede. And I was with my best friend at the time, and her boyfriend, who pulled, like I fell, he pulled me up the stairs, and it was terrifying. Like getting into our seats was one of the most life-threatening moments of my life. And it's not even in Combat Love. Like Combat Love, my memoir, has other life-threatening moments. What I would do for music started on that night at the Spectrum with Aerosmith. Oh, and then the kicker, Darren, is that 3 songs in, somebody throws a bottle at Steven Tyler and he goes, "F you, Philadelphia," and they walk off. So like I risked my life for 3 songs.
So there's so many things to process right there. First, it's Philadelphia. No disrespect meant to Philadelphia, but that is an abrasive concert city. They boo the Easter Bunny in Philadelphia, so that's scary. Bill Burr's whole career is based on him getting booed in Philadelphia and him retorting at the crowd. So that's the first thing.
Right, and I didn't know that at 12.
Second thing is, that was not Aerosmith at their cleanest, nicest moment. So there's certain bands where the singer would go like, "Hey, everybody, back up, be cool." Steven Tyler would not have done that at that point.
No, he was in no mood for this nonsense. Yeah.
No. Wow, that is a lot to take in right there. So I find a lot of, even the punk people loved Aerosmith originally. So that is refreshing to hear that you didn't go, "Oh no, Shrapnel was the first and only band that I was into."
No, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because from my hometown of Monmouth County, New Jersey, we were quite like egalitarian about music. We weren't music snobs. We loved music and we risked our life for music, literally, but we liked everything. I mean, I would also go, we loved punk, we loved rock. We would go to Trade Winds, which was like a local disco, and danced awesome disco songs. Like we just liked music, was part of our lives, and we were not picky. I mean, I shouldn't say we weren't picky. We were picky, but we weren't elitist about it.
Well, if I can make it creepy and small world on you, I think my wife went to the high school that you did. Is that also called the Performing Arts? Red Bank?
Yes.
Yeah, so my wife went there too. And it's
creepy. I hope you mean fabulous. I'm so excited about this connection.
Sometimes when being an investigator, sometimes when you tell people that you figure things out, they go, block, they don't want anything to do with you.
Oh, I love it. Did she find it to be the epicenter of the universe like I did?
Sort of. I mean, she had to bust in from like Wall or Belmar and then go, because like being the piano nerd that practices for 5 hours a day and then doesn't take math or science courses and just practices piano. Red Bank is fascinating to me in that you probably, and I'm projecting on you, you probably grew up thinking, I'm in the middle of nowhere, I want to be a city person. But now at this point in time, with Kevin Smith, with the Count Basie Theater, with how cool the downtown area of Red Bank has become, it's almost cooler to be there or Asbury than it is to be a city person these days.
Well, you've got it slightly wrong, which is that we grew up thinking it was the center of everything. And the
Oh,
reason we grew up, at least I grew up thinking it was the center of everything, and I wasn't yearning for the city, was because the Count Basie Theater before that was, I think, the Carlton, and that there was live music all the time that we went to, and Jack's. So before Kevin Smith, I think, like lives above Jack's music. Jack's music had like every album and every bong, and paraphernalia you could ever
sure.
want. And so we weren't like, oh, get me out of this popsicle, small town. We were like, everything was there. And then New York City was just 40 miles away. So we would also venture into the city. So I didn't feel like we were in some podunk outpost.
Well, in terms of Red Bank, to keep the weirdness going here,
Please.
so I wrote a book that came out earlier this year on David Lee Roth, and his most recent band incarnation, the bass player and drummer, who are much younger than me, they're from Red Bank.
This is my point. Red Bank breeds musicians.
Then my friend, for a while, he was in Ryan Adams's band before he was disgraced, of course,
Sure.
before,
Of course.
pre-cancellation. The side project that the bass player and I think the drummer had going on, they called Red Bank Catholic. So I believe they were Red Bank people too. So
well, there's a high school. So our rival high school, Red Bank Regional, where I went, our rival high school was Red Bank Catholic. So they're probably Red Bank Catholic guys.
I believe that was the case. So what I'm getting at is, do you have more of an area other than my hometown high school that kind of delivered all these important people, but that want nothing to do with Red Bank once they left it?
No, because who wants nothing to do with Red Bank? Everybody wants something to do with Red Bank.
Got it. So, Shrapnel, who we're mentioning for the 10th time here, Dave eventually found fame with Monster Magnet. At what point did you realize that was the same guy?
What do you mean at what point? I've worshipped him since I was 14. Of course, I've followed his every move in music. There was never a moment where I was like, I wonder what happened to those guys. No, every minute I was like, okay, so where's Blitzbeer playing? Because that was Phil Cavano's next band. I was like, and Monster Magnet, they're playing in Boston. Okay, I'm going to bring my husband to Monster Magnet. Like, once a fan, always a fan. And those guys in particular, the guys who were in Shrapnel. So Danny Ray, Phil Cavano, and Dave Windorf went on to have, really big music careers. Impressively, like, I'm so happy for they are lifelong musicians. I'm so happy for their success. Shrapnel was the start of it and my favorite of the chapters, but they're legit musicians.
I also like the Atomic Bitchwax, who are like a Monster Magnet offshoot.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think it's more of a big in Europe thing than a big in New Jersey thing. But either way, when did you actually leave Jersey and become a city person?
Well, as you'll read in my memoir, I left unwillingly when I was 15. So part of my deep nostalgia and attachment for this area and for Shrapnel is that I was pulled away from it before its time, before I was ready to go. And so at 15, my mother, I was an only child, daughter of divorced parents. And so my mother was kind of tired of living in our, 2 square mile town of suburban Shrewsbury, and she wanted to set sail for different pastures. So at 15, she dragged me, and I don't think I'm using that term lightly, across the country to Washington State, which was the biggest culture shock coming from Red Bank Regional and coming from Red Bank, and New Jersey. When I landed with a thud in Washington State, they had never seen anybody that looked like me. They'd never heard anybody with a Jersey accent. They'd never seen anyone in straight leg Levi's. They'd never known of anybody who liked the Ramones. Like, that, it was such that people would come around and be like, can you talk for us? I was like, ay, ay, ay. Like, it was such culture shock on both ends. So I then missed it so much. Well, as you'll read in the book, at 16, I leave home. So I don't, my mother and I part ways, and I leave home at 16 and I crawl my way 3,000 miles back across the country because I miss Red Bank so much. And so I go back to Red Bank Regional victoriously, my triumphant return. And then I had to leave to go to college, and I really didn't want to, but that was kind of what my path was always going to be. And I knew that by then that I wanted to be a TV reporter. So I knew that I would have to go to college, though if you'd given, but if left to my own druthers, I would have stayed in Monmouth County, New Jersey forever. But I had this scholarship to college and I did want to be a TV reporter. So I left. And from there, I lived in cities virtually. I mean, I went in Washington, D.C. to American University, and I've never been able to live, a full-time in Shrewsbury again, but I do obviously miss it and really have deep, deep affection for that place.
The book takes you through Vancouver. You've been everywhere, like the Johnny Cash song goes, and all that.
I'm just like Johnny Cash.
Just like Johnny Cash. So obviously, you are in an admirable, my words, not yours, an admirable point of your career right now. People know who you are, acclaimed, etc. But at what point in your career as a broadcast journalist did you feel comfortable, like this was it for life, that you weren't so much on pins and needles anymore?
I guess it was 10 years ago when I got to CNN. I mean, 10 years ago when I got to CNN, in the book, I describe how much of my life was driven by hunger, literal and figurative. And so I always had a feeling of, this might be my last paycheck. This might be my last meal. I have to keep climbing. I have to keep striving. I have to make sure, look for the next job and the brass ring. And then when I got to CNN, that kind of was the brass ring. And I found letters, in fact, that I had written in college to the bureau chief of CNN back then, like begging for an informational interview and begging to be able to like take him to coffee, because I would have been so lucky, I thought and wrote, to work at CNN. And so then when I finally got there, it felt like I could exhale and stop, the constant kind of attempting to strive for the next greener pasture. So I now do feel like, I've been able to accomplish my dream and do what I had always hoped to do as a teenager.
I've always felt that CNN was underrated from the entertainment coverage aspect. It always got a lot of exclusives that everyone else didn't. So, for example, one of the last interviews I remember of Eddie Van Halen was a CNN. That Grace Dice Clay meltdown interview where he says he doesn't work in the gym, that is CNN, etc. And that's really come a long way from the early 90s when I was growing up watching World Championship Wrestling, and you just see the back of the person watching the monitors and the newscaster in front of them. When did a CNN really get on your periphery?
Well, in college, it was, I remember hearing about it because it was relatively new. And it was like this 24-hour cable network. And there was, with wars in particular,
Yeah.
It brought us into the sort of front lines in a way that we hadn't been able to see live, before, or at least in immediate terms. So I remember professors, my college professors, and I remember people in the business really buzzing about CNN and that kind of level of like, bring you to the field, bring you to the scene, run and gun, like having the cameras and the live shot, setting it up, jerry rigging it on the back of a truck, like all of that stuff was very admirable and cool. But what you're talking about, the Larry King live like era, was also, CNN could do it all. They could do it from that, like the entertainment and exclusives and doing like poignant one-on-ones, to obviously even today being out in the field with our incredible war correspondents. We cover the spectrum of news. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that it has always been a super compelling thing to watch.
Absolutely. So bringing it back to you here, when some people write a book, they go one and done. And then other people go, oh, I'm already thinking about the next one, or it's a 2-book deal. Are you already thinking about the next one? Because if I were to guess, you finished this book about 9 months ago.
Fair. Yeah, that's good. You're right. Good guess.
So another one, or you're one and done?
Well, I don't, there's no book that's like currently tapping me on the shoulder, demanding to be written. However, I do like to write, and I do like to process whatever's going on in my life through writing.
Mhm.
So I'm always still writing, but it's not like I write it in chapters, or it's not like I know an arc of a book. I just write stuff down. I mean, some of in Combat Love, I have journal entries that people read, like from my diary from when I was a teenager. So writing has always been in my life, and it is a way that is cathartic to me. So it's possible that something will form itself into a book.
The other angle is sometimes the people cut 200 pages from their book and they have that left over so they have the head start for the next one. Is there a lot left over from the final version of the book?
Yes, there's a ton left over because I have such a vivid memory that the first version of this, the first draft of this, had like so many more scenes and so many more memories. In fact, one of the scenes, the scene that I started with, okay, the very first scene that I wrote was about this like crazy night in high school at a party and different parties. And it was kind of like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like it just kept going and going. It lasted all night. It ends up with me like climbing in the window of my best friend's house and like us staying up all night and reliving the night and everything. And it was just, there was funny stuff. It truly was just standard teenage hijinks, that I thought was encapsulated into this night. So I wrote it all, and it's one of my best friend and my favorite memories to relive together. And I wrote it and I sent it to her. She was like, "Yeah, you can't include this." And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's such a good scene. She goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't lead anywhere." And I go, I know it doesn't lead anywhere, but it's a great teenage hijinks example." She goes, "To what end? How does it further the story?" So yeah, there's a ton of different scenes like that, but I just don't know if I'm going to go back to the teenage hijinks well after this for another book.
There's a new D. Snyder book that he already did his memoir a couple of years ago, but his new one is this based on a true story novel about something that happened in high school. So you possibly do have something there, just out of context, and it's its own animal. So I hope that happens. But three quick questions, and then I let you go, Alisyn, if that's cool.
Yes, of course. Well, no, it's not cool, Darren, because I'd like to just stay talking to you all day.
You're too
Can you
damn kind here.
cancel all of your plans from here on out for the rest of the day?
So I'm going to tell the Fraggles in 30 minutes that no, I'm talking to Alisyn. Okay, so when I find a person has a career related to entertainment or broadcast or performing, usually they're like a kid in the candy store at the beginning, and that's all they do. They go, I can get all the tickets I want. I'm going to go out. And then eventually they burn out. And then their number two hobby or passion becomes the exact opposite of their career to keep their sanity. What's your number two passion or hobby besides, family and your day job?
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say that because writing a book is the polar opposite of being in broadcast news. So broadcast news, deadline, 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 in 5, 4, 3, 2, go. And,
Yeah.
you're doing everything with a team. There's cameramen, there's writers, there's producers all around you, and everything's this breathless pace. Writing a book is glacial. Like for a broadcast journalist, it's shocking how long it takes to write a book and publish a book.
Yes.
Like it's truly the antithesis. So I think that you're onto something because this is the B plant, not B plant. It's just another activity that I use to kind of decompress from that, breathless hamster wheel of broadcast news.
I was trying to figure out if you were one of the secret golf people, the secret punk hard rock golf people.
Wait a minute. Who's a secret punk golfer?
We all know that Alice Cooper is,
That's true. I did know that. Yeah.
And whenever you look at one of those celebrity pro-am tournaments, you'd see probably there'd be a member of Van Halen, there'd be some punk rock people, that kind of a thing. I don't think Steven Tyler is a golf person, but probably two members of Aerosmith are golf people.
I'd be afraid to golf with them because I'd be afraid, once again, it would be life-threatening somehow. I'm not sure how, but like for me, I'm sure it would be. No, I mean, if Alice Cooper asked me to go golfing, I would definitely do it. But beyond that, I haven't have fallen in love with that. No.
And just think about it. Isn't golf the exact opposite of being a demon who's wearing makeup on stage and threatening everyone?
It is. I mean,
Exact
like, does
opposite.
he wear a boa constrictor around his neck while golfing?
He wears very hideous traditional golf clothing.
Ah,
It's very saddening in a way.
disappointing.
Next question. What's the last concert that you went to for fun? Not because you were covering it or you had to do research for your great memoir.
Oh, okay. The last concert I went to for fun. Oh, the Revivalists. The Revivalists were the last concert I went to, and then before that, speaking of revivals, was the English Beat. Like I went
Oh,
to that when they had come around for one of their tours a couple summers ago, which is just one of my favorite bands, and I love that. And the Revivalists are awesome too. They were both great.
I like the Beat and the English Beat, but their logo confusion it needs to be worked on.
Yeah, me too. But aren't they the exact same thing?
Paul Collins is the Beat, and then Dave Wakeling is the English Beat, which also does the general public. But I think
No,
they
I know.
the same font logo thing, so it confuses a lot of people.
So it's very confusing. And isn't Fine Young, is also Fine Young Cannibals connected there too?
I
Like were the
think so. Can't confirm. I don't want to get hit with the fake news tag about
Sure, of course. No, that I loved the Beat. And then I was like, what's this new band I love? Oh, the English Beat. I too, like, I remember in 15 being like, what's happening right now? But they're both so great.
Did you do the What's Happening because there's the album called What's Happening by the Beat? And you were
If so, yes, because I'm a genius, or B, because it's buried in the recesses of my subconscious.
fair. Well, last question for you. You're obviously the most punk rock person at CNN. Who's the second most punk rock person that we may not know is a punk rock person?
John Avlon.
Really?
Yeah. John Avlon, who's, one of our contributors, obviously brilliant political mind. He's written many political books. His, head is like a lockbox of history. He and I recently went to, there was like some punk exhibit at a Midtown museum that we went to, and it had all sorts of cool Blondie stuff and talking it. And I spotted a Shrapnel poster there, which was awesome for me. So yeah, John and I talk about music a lot.
Paltrocast.